Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a first look at the Week 4 NFL main slate on Draftkings. We're going to go position by position, quarterback through tight end, just kind of take a first look at this Week 4 slate. What stands out to me, obviously early on in the week, I'm recording this video on Tuesday. We don't have access to any projections yet, any ownership projections. This is just me blindly going through each position and just talking through what stands out, looking at some of the games that are high scoring this week. Where can we expect a lot of points to be scored, and kind of building our stacks, kind of building our lineups off of that. But before we do get started with the breakdown, as always, guys, I'd appreciate it if you would click that like button down below. If you're new to the channel here, make sure you click that subscribe button as well. And also, be sure to comment down below. Let me know some of your favorite plays for this Week 4 slate. What does stand out to you early on in the week? I'm not going to talk about every single player on the slate, so I would like to know some of your guys' thoughts. Let me know what kind of stands out to you, what you're looking at for Week 4. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and start off at quarterback. Start off at the top, just kind of go through the position. Not obviously going to talk about every single player, just what really stands out. So Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, your most expensive quarterbacks. You even got Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, all those guys 7K or above. Mahomes, against Philly is right now, this game I think does have the highest implied total on the slate. Patrick Mahomes is basically going to be playable every single week. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. He's someone you can always consider. Mahomes, once again, I think is a good option. I mean, he's been great for fantasy so far this year. 36, 28, 24 DK points. He had a floor game last week, and he still scored 24 DK points. Like, Mahomes is one of the safest options on the board every single week. He obviously has some of the highest upside as well in a game that projects to be high scoring against the Eagles, highest total on the slate. Mahomes is for sure in play. Josh Allen coming off a big game last week against Washington. Now he gets a matchup at home against Houston. Only concern here is that, right now Buffalo they're massive favorites right now. Buffalo's favored by 15.5 against the Texans. I worry that the Texans don't keep this game close and that maybe Buffalo just doesn't throw the ball much in the second half. But still, this Buffalo team, I mean, they might be the most pass-heavy team this year. It seems like even when they do get a big lead, like they're still throwing the ball. Like they won 43-21 last week, and Josh Allen still threw the ball 43 times in a game where they won by 22 points. So honestly, I don't even know if I should be worried about that. But 8K, Josh Allen coming off a big game last week. His price tag obviously went up a lot, but good matchup here against Houston. Josh Allen, for sure someone you could look to. Kyler Murray, I think, might be the guy that stands out to me the most at the top. The matchup against the Rams do have a good defense, but this is another game with a very high total, 54 implied total between the Rams and the Cardinals, second highest total on the slate. Kyler Murray in these type of games that project to be high scoring and games that have shootout potential, these are the kind of games I love to target Kyler Murray in. I know the Rams defense is good, but I'm not worried about that. People kind of overrate matchups anyway, especially for quarterbacks, especially for elite quarterbacks like Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray's been an elite quarterback this season. He's been a great fantasy quarterback, 34, 38, 22 DK points through 3 games. He had like one of his worst games of the year last week against Jacksonville and still scored 22 DK points. Like, his floor is just so massive. The ceiling is through the roof as well. Like, Kyler Murray has 40-plus point upside. So at 7,800, he actually might be my favorite quarterback at the top this week. We'll kind of talk about some other options, but I really like Kyler Murray in what should be a high-scoring game against the Rams. I think he's a very good play at the top, 7,800. Price tag went down a little bit after somewhat of a disappointing game last week. Tough spot for Lamar on the road against Denver. I think Lamar is going to be really low owned. We don't know ownership yet, but I assume Lamar will come in with very low ownership. 7,500 against Denver. That's not the best spot, but anytime you can play a low-owned Lamar, that's something that interests me in tournaments. Russ Wilson against the 49ers, another game that projects to be high-scoring, 52.5 total there in that game, 52.5 total in that game. So that's another one we could look to target. Obviously, Russell Wilson's kind of playable every single week. He's another guy you can play almost every week, no matter what the matchup is. Matthew Stafford, I think, is going to be a really good fantasy quarterback this year. He's someone I'm definitely going to be targeting in games that project to be high-scoring, and this is obviously one of them. Against the Cardinals at home, I think Matthew Stafford is a really good option at 7K. Doesn't give you much rushing upside, which is obviously, a concern. It's tough to pay up for quarterbacks that don't give you rushing upside. Like, really all these guys above Matthew Stafford can at least run a little bit. Russ Wilson, Lamar, Kyler, Josh Allen, Mahomes. Whereas Stafford, he's kind of a pocket passer. His upside's a little bit capped, I think, but he can still go out there and throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he did it last week against Tampa Bay. So Matthew Stafford at 7K, more of a tournament play, I think, but definitely someone I will be looking to in tournaments this week, I have a feeling. Jalen Hurts didn't look great, Monday night against Dallas, but now he gets a matchup at home against Kansas City and what is expected to be the highest scoring game on the slate. I think Jalen Hurts is a good bounce back candidate this week. I do have some interest in him at 6,900. Dak Prescott, anytime he's at home, I have some interest in Dak. He's always been a really good quarterback at home. We kind of saw that Monday night against, the Eagles. Carolina's got a good defense. I think they're going to be a really good defensive team this year. They're much improved from last season, but still at 6,700, I think Dak is for sure someone we could look to in tournaments this week. On the other side, like Sam Darnold, I mean, he's been good so far. It seemed like $6K for Sam Darnold. It feels weird to pay that price tag, but he scored at least 20 DK points in every game so far. Dallas's defense is what I'm not really worried about. They've been better than I expected so far, but still, I think this is going to be a team we want to attack on the defensive end. So Sam Darnold, 6K. I mean, I don't mind going there either. Like, he could be someone I look to in tournaments. Value-wise at quarterback, though, this week, I think the one guy I could see playing for cheap would probably be Jimmy Garoppolo. Not because I think Jimmy Garoppolo has much upside, but just because this game is expected to be so high scoring. If Seattle gets a big lead in this game, which is possible, I mean, right now I think Seattle is favored, or they're not favored actually, which is surprising, but I think this could be a game where maybe San Fran gets behind a little bit. Jimmy G, the only thing I worry about with him is, this San Fran team, they just don't throw the ball much. Like, they're not going to throw the ball a ton unless they really get behind. But it's expected to be a high-scoring game against Seattle. Jimmy Garoppolo at 5,600, you could go to in tournaments as like a cheaper guy. But value-wise at quarterback, man, it's tough to find too much value this week. Value's kind of been tough these last few weeks. There really hasn't been a ton of cheap options that I've loved. Justin Fields, I did have interest in last week, and obviously he was terrible. Did not look great. He gets a matchup this week, though, at home against the Lions. So if they do decide to start Justin Fields again, I could see going back to him. His ownership should be way lower than it was last week. Obviously, he busted kind of as a more popular quarterback. He wasn't massive chalk or anything, but people did play Justin Fields a good amount last week. I don't think they're going to play him this week, but if he does start again, I could see going back to Justin Fields in a much better matchup against the Lions. But that's probably it for the quarterback position. That's kind of what stands out to me first look. Kyler Murray is definitely my favorite option at this position, I think, right now. Let's plug him into our first look lineup, just kind of see what we can build around Kyler Murray, see what we can get with him in our lineup. And I do want to hit on Kyler Murray's prop over on PrizePicks. So for those of you that have not checked out PrizePicks yet, obviously, guys, they're the sponsor of this video. I know a lot of you already have signed up for PrizePicks. I appreciate you guys signing up using my promo code. If you do sign up for PrizePicks, use promo code NOAH. When you sign up, you will get your first deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit whatever it may be, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever you deposit, they will match that, and they will double your deposit. So if you deposit $50, they'll give you an additional $50 to play with, so now you have $100. If you deposit $100, they'll give you an additional $100 to play with, so now you have $200 to use. So check out PrizePicks. Use promo code NOAH. One prop I do like on PrizePicks for this week is Kyler Murray's passing yard. So his passing yard projection right now is 294.5. He's gone over this in 2 of their 3 games so far this year. The one game where he didn't go over 294, he came just close to it, 289. So in a game that's likely to shoot out against the Rams, in a game where we probably should see the Cardinals playing from behind, I mean, Kyler Murray definitely can throw for 300-plus yards this week. So over 294 passing yards for Kyler Murray. That is one prop I do like over on PrizePicks, and we'll talk about a couple more before we do in the video. But again, guys, if you want to check out PrizePicks, they're the sponsor of this video. Make sure to sign up over there and use promo code NOAH when you do sign up. You can take a look at their Week 4 board, see what they have to offer. They already have stuff up for the Thursday night game, and I'm sure they're going to add more stuff for the main slate, just kind of as we get closer to Sunday. But let's go ahead and talk about running back now. Talk about the top of this position. So obviously Christian McCaffrey not going to be playing this week, so kind of take him off the board. We got Derrick Henry as the most expensive option overall. Then you got Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, who we don't know yet if he's going to play or not. Obviously, Dalvin Cook did not play last week. I'm recording this video on Tuesday, so we really don't have any news yet on Dalvin Cook. This is something we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on as the week goes on. We'll talk more about that situation, when we get to Friday and we make my final look video. But Derrick Henry, I think, last week he was kind of my favorite option at the top of the running back position, especially after Cook got ruled out. I think that's probably the case once again this week. It's close between him and Alvin Kamara. Kamara does get a good matchup at home against the Giants. I think Kamara is a very appealing play, but Against the Jets, I mean, this is a great spot for Derrick Henry. This is a game where we expect Tennessee to most likely win with ease. This is one of those type of games where we could see 30 carries for Derrick Henry. He's been getting some good usage in the passing game as well. They've been giving him more targets, 4, 6, 3 targets through 3 games. Obviously, the volume's going to be there on a weekly basis. The Jets are not going to stop Derrick Henry. Tennessee's going to run the ball a ton in this game, most likely. They're going to probably be playing with a lead, so Derrick Henry, I think, is probably my favorite running back at the top early on in the week, but him and Kamara, I think both look appealing. And if Dalvin Cook winds up playing, I think Dalvin Cook as well at 8,100 is for sure someone I'd be looking to go to at the top. I think Aaron Jones will be really low owned against Pittsburgh, so anytime you could play like a low owned Aaron Jones, I'd have some interest in that in tournaments. Saquon was pretty popular last week, had a good matchup against Atlanta. Tougher spot this week on the road against the Saints, but the volume was there for Saquon last week. 22 touches. He's been heavily involved these last 2 weeks. He's been playing, 80+% of the snaps. I'm pretty sure he played over 80% of the snaps again last week. He might have actually played more than that. Yeah, he played 84% in week 2 and then 86% last week. So Saquon's pretty much back to being a workhorse running back. He's going to play 80+% of the snaps. He's going to get 12 to 15 carries, 4 to 6 targets most likely. 6,700, even in a tougher matchup against the Saints, I think Saquon is still someone you can look to in the mid-range. I like Alexander Mattison a lot, assuming that Dalvin Cook does not play. Mattison became a top option for me last week whenever Cook got ruled out, and he crushed. 26 carries, 112 yards, got a ton of usage in the passing game as well, 8 targets, 6 catches for 59 yards. They pretty much used Mattison like they used Dalvin Cook. They gave him a massive workload. He was their clear number 1 back. He got pretty much all the goal line carries. Is 6,600. If Cook is out again, I think Alexander Mattison is a really, really good option, and he might be my favorite play in the mid-range. I'm going to assume for now that Cook doesn't play this week, but that's just something we'll have to keep an eye on. I'm going to plug Mattison in, though, to our first look lineup because I like him a lot at 6,600. Even with that price tag coming up, we saw last year whenever Cook was out, Mattison was 7,200, I think, and he was massive chalks at 7,200. Last week he was 6K, and he really wasn't even that popular. I'll be interested to see, if Cook's out again this week, what the ownership looks like on Alexander Mattison. He's going to be someone that I'm playing a lot, while Cook is out, just because the workload's clearly going to be there for him, and he's a guy that gets a lot of usage in the passing game. He's got a path to 30 touches. He obviously got over that last week. But I like Mattison a lot in the mid-range. If Cook sits again, Zeke at home against the Panthers. The Panthers, they've been elite against the run this year. They've been the best run defense so far this season. But Zeke, looked really good Monday night against Philly. Got 2 touchdowns, got 20 touches. He should get 15 to 20 touches once again, should get all the goal line work at 6,500. Zeke, I think, is someone we can go to in the mid-range. Chris Carson against San Fran and what should be a high-scoring game. I think Chris Carson, 6,300, makes some sense for sure. DeAndre Swift, his pass game usage has been great so far. The matchup on the road against the Bears is probably not ideal, but if the Lions are going to be playing from behind every single week, which it seems like they're going to be doing, we're going to see DeAndre Swift get 6, 8 targets almost every single week. He could definitely be someone you go to at 6,200 if you want to go to him in the mid-range too. Probably more of a tournament play, but definitely viable. Chuba Hubbard, 5,900. Chuba Hubbard obviously got priced up for Christian McCaffrey being out for this game. I think if Chuba Hubbard was if he was 4,500 this week, he'd be massive chalk. I think at 5,900, he's not going to be too popular, but clearly he is the number 1 back for Carolina right now. He took over for Christian McCaffrey last week whenever McCaffrey got injured, got pretty much all the usage, got 11 carries for 52 yards, also got some pass game usage as well. He's probably got a path to 20-plus touches against Dallas at 5,900. Chuba Hubbard is definitely someone we can go to in the 5K range. David Montgomery, though, I'll be interested to see what his ownership is. I have a feeling that David Montgomery is going to be popular this week, but at home against the Lions, great matchup, only 5,800. David Montgomery is someone I do like a lot in this mid-range. I know he was terrible last week. Pretty much the entire Bears offense was bad, though. That was a tough matchup on the road against Cleveland. This is a much better spot for the Bears. Going back home, getting a matchup against a bad Lions team. The Lions have actually been a lot better against the run so far this year. They were terrible against the run last season. They've been a bit improved this season, but 5,800 for David Montgomery, a workhorse running back that has a path to 20-plus touches. He's too cheap in my opinion. I like plugging him into our first look lineup as well, going with Mattison and Montgomery as our 2 running backs. And then there's other guys you could go to like CEH. He was popular last week. He was super cheap at 4,600. Price tag came up a little bit this week, 5,400, but again, should be a high-scoring game against the Eagles. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is someone we could go back to in the 5K range. But that probably does it for running back. Like Trey Sermon was kind of the clear number one back for San Fran in that Sunday night game against Green Bay, but he really wasn't very efficient. He didn't do much overall. He did get a goal line touchdown, which kind of salvaged his day. Depending on how many active running backs the 49ers have this week, if Trey Sermon's going to be the starting running back again at 5K, I could see going back to Trey Sermon. But that's probably it for running back. I think we can go ahead and move on to wide receivers. So at the wide receiver position at the top here, you got your usual guys at the top: Tyreek Hill, Devonta Adams, Cooper Kupp kind of slowly making his way towards the top of the receiver position. He was a guy that I don't know if anyone expected him to be this good so far this year. I think he might actually be the wide receiver one so far this season. 26 DK points week 1, 39 DK points week 2, 30 DK points last week against Tampa Bay. Like, he has just been a target monster. He's been getting elite usage. He's been getting a ton of red zone opportunities. Whenever they get near the red zone, they're looking to get Cooper Kupp touchdowns in the red zone. He scored, I think, both of his touchdowns last week came in the red zone. Yeah, Cooper Kupp, he's a good play for sure against Arizona. Even DeAndre Hopkins on the other side of that game, I'll be interested to see what the ownership is on Hopkins this week. He's kind of had 2 back-to-back pretty bad games for DeAndre Hopkins. 15 DK points, 5 DK points. Matchup this week against the Rams, not ideal. He's probably going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. But I still like DeAndre Hopkins, especially if I'm planning to play Kyler Murray in a good amount of my lineups. I'm going to be stacking him up with Hopkins. So Hopkins could be a good tournament play at the top. But really all these guys, man. Tyreek Hill in a high-scoring game against the Eagles, you could go there. Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Steph Diggs. If you're playing Josh Allen, obviously you can stack him up with Steph Diggs. Really, these 7K and above receivers are all in play for me. I think the one guy that I probably won't be playing a ton of will be Calvin Ridley. But that's just because I don't really play Matt Ryan that often. Like, rarely do I stack up Atlanta. I think if I were to play Calvin Ridley, he'd probably be like more of a one-off. I don't know if I'd be full stacking Atlanta, stacking up Ryan and Ridley, just because the upside so far this year, we haven't seen much upside from this Atlanta offense. They've yet to really put up a ton of points. But like Lockett, Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, all these guys are in play at the top. If you can fit them, for sure go there. Let's talk about some of these mid-range receivers, like the Cowboys receivers. You got CeeDee Lamb at 6,700. Amari Cooper's down here at 6K. I think both these guys, didn't do that well Monday night, but they are primed for bounce-back performances this week. Both of them should continue to get massive targets, or a massive target share in this Cowboys offense. I have some interest in them. If A.J. Brown winds up sitting this week, I could see Julio Jones getting a lot of ownership at 6,500 against the Jets. Julio is definitely someone you could play in the mid-range. Odell Beckham, I like a lot at 5,800. So Odell Beckham made his debut last week against the Bears. He was targeted heavily as well. He got 9 targets, 5 catches for 77 yards. Also got a 10-yard rush. Finished with 13 DK points. He played on a good amount of the snaps last week. Now, it was his first game back from his injury, so there was a possibility that he would be somewhat limited. He still played 64% of the snaps, though. He was targeted 9 times. He led the team in target share, I do believe. 5,800, getting a week to rest up. I think we're going to see the target share. I wouldn't say target share, but we're going to see the snaps for Odell Beckham just keep going up on a weekly basis. The target share should it should continue to be high, though, especially while Jarvis Landry remains out. We're going to see Odell get 8 to 10 targets on a weekly basis. And, this week in a game against Minnesota that's probably going to be close, we might see the Browns forced to throw a lot more than they were last week. Obviously, they won that game pretty easily against the Bears. They didn't really throw much. I don't think Baker Mayfield dropped back a ton at all. I like going back to Odell Beckham, though. I had some interest in Odell last week in tournaments. I like going to him at 5,800, and since we already have Alexander Mattison in this lineup, it kind of gives us some correlation. It gives us a little secondary stack. Madison run back with Odell Beckham. I do like Odell Beckham a lot in the 5K range. He definitely stands out at 5,800. I think his price tag, I said it last week, I don't think Odell's going to be in the 5K range for too long. I think next week, if he has a good game, which is possible, he's probably going to be 6,500, close to 7K. While Jarvis Landry remains out, there's no reason for Odell Beckham to be only 5,800 when he is the clear top option in this Browns offense. But there's some other 5K guys you could go to, or there's other receivers you could go to in the 5K range. Like, if David Montgomery is going to be really popular this week, a good way to get leverage is just to play the pass game. So stacking up Justin Fields with Allen Robinson, if Montgomery winds up being popular, that's a good way to get some leverage. I could definitely see going to Allen Robinson. Devontae Smith, especially if you're playing Jalen Hurts, I think Devontae Smith would be the first guy I would look to stack up with Jalen Hurts. 5,700, I do have some interest in him in the 5K range. Robert Woods, though, I mentioned Robert Woods at the beginning of the video. He still remains too cheap, man. 5,300 for Robert Woods. He was very popular last week and obviously didn't really do much. Only got 6 targets, 3 catches for 33 yards. Only finished with 6 DraftKings points. He was too cheap last week at 5,700. He's too cheap once again this week at 5,300. Another good matchup at home against the Cardinals. At some point, we're going to see Robert Woods have a big game. I know Cooper Kupp's been kind of the bright spot for this Rams offense so far. He's been, kind of Matthew Stafford's go-to guy. But we know Robert Woods is a talented receiver as well, and we know he's going to pop off, put up a big game at some point. I'm going to continue to play Robert Woods as long as this price tag is, still as low as it is. And especially in this lineup, since we do have Kyler Murray, it gives us some positive correlation running it back with someone on the Rams side. So Robert Woods at 5,300, I like a lot to pair, to correlate with our Kyler Murray lineup. And I think if we're playing Kyler Murray, we might want to look to stack him with somebody. Christian Kirk, 5,300, I think makes for a good stacking option to go with Kyler Murray. He's been pretty good so far this year in terms of targets. The targets have been consistent. The DK game, the game log looks good. 24 DK points week 1, only 9 DK points against Minnesota week 2, but bounced back last week against Jacksonville, 20 DK points, 7 catches, 104 yards. We mentioned earlier, if DeAndre Hopkins is going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, he might have a little bit of a tougher time this week. I still think Hopkins is a really good option. I think he makes a lot of sense in tournaments, but some of these secondary Cardinals receivers I do like. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, I think you can stack up both those guys with Kyler Murray, especially if, Jalen Ramsey is going to be shadowing Hopkins and giving him all kind of trouble. That could make, that could mean that maybe Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, these guys are going to be able to get more open, if they're facing the weaker part of the secondary. At 5,300, I like stacking up Christian Kirk and Kyler Murray together, running it back with Robert Woods. That is definitely a quarterback receiver stack I kind of like early on in the week. And even like in cash games, I think these guys are going to project very well for their salary. 5,300 for both Woods and Kirk is probably too cheap for what should be one of the highest scoring games on the slate between the Cardinals and Rams. So those are two guys I also like in the 5K range. Corey Davis at home against Tennessee, a little revenge game for Corey Davis. He should continue to just get a lot of targets, a lot of usage in this Jets offense. The Jets are going to be a team that's playing from behind a lot this season. Obviously, they've been playing from behind pretty much every game so far this year. They're 0-3. They should probably lose again against Tennessee. They're probably going to be playing from behind once again this week. It's a good matchup as well. Tennessee secondary hasn't really been that good this year in terms of yards to opposing wide receivers. I'm pretty sure they've been giving it up to opposing wideouts. Allowed 680 receiving yards so far this season to opposing wide receivers, which is 3rd highest in the league. This Titans team is a team you can definitely throw on. If we expect Zach Wilson to have to drop back a lot, if the Tennessee's playing from ahead, the Jets are forced to throw a lot. I mean, we might see 10-plus targets once again for Corey Davis. He looks really good at the 5K range. I don't know how much I'm really going to be stacking up the Jets, but I think Corey Davis as a one-off at 5K makes a lot of sense for sure. And then talking about some value at wide receiver, if we're looking to go cheap here, Rondale Moore, especially in Kyler Murray stacks, I think Rondale Moore at 4,600 looks really good. Even AJ Green you could go to as well, but I would probably just rather play Rondale Moore. I think Rondale Moore just gives you more upside. McCole Hardman, just trying to get exposure to a high-scoring game. McCole Hardman at 4,400 against the Eagles. Have some interest there. I think that's probably it, though, for value wide receivers. Like, last week with Deontay Johnson out, James Washington did get a little bit of opportunity. I don't think I'd be playing James Washington this week, but he would at least be somewhat viable if Deontay Johnson sits again. But that's probably it for wide receiver. I don't think I'm really, nobody down here stands out. We could get some news throughout the week that maybe changes that, but for now, that does it for this position. Let's go ahead and touch on tight end real quick. So at tight end, you got Travis Kelce at the top, as you would expect. Most expensive option, 8,100. Look, you can play Travis Kelce every single week. He's obviously someone you could go to this week if you want to, go that way. I personally think we're probably going to have to go a little bit cheaper, especially, in our lineup. You see what we have here. I mean, let's just plug in a 2K defense. Let's just plug in the Jets defense. I mean, I'm not going to play the Jets defense, but let's see. If we plug in the Jets defense, that leaves us 5,700 per player for our last 2 spots. So obviously we're not going to be able to fit in Travis Kelce. So into the first look lineup, we won't be able to get Kelce, but Kelce is clearly the top projected tight end pretty much every single week. I think if you want to play Travis Kelce, by all means, go ahead. But George Kittle, I do like for the discount. George Kittle, only 5,900. Finally had a decent game last week. 7 catches, 92 yards, got 9 targets. He got off to a really slow start this season, but we're kind of seeing Kittle slowly, start to get his way back towards the top of the tight end position. Obviously, Kittle, so far these last 2 to 3 years, it's been 1A, 1B between George Kittle and Travis Kelce. Kelce's had the upper hand, these last few seasons, but I still think Kittle is the second best tight end in the league. He's obviously an elite receiver, 5,900 in a game that should be high scoring against Seattle. I think George Kittle looks really good, and we have the salary to get him in. So let's plug George Kittle into our first look lineup, and then we'll kind of talk through the flex, what we can fit in the flex spot. But with the rest of the tight end position, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, those guys are obviously in play. I would rather play Kittle, but those guys are viable. Kyle Pitts, been disappointing so far this year, but the usage has still been good. They're still using him a lot in the offense. He's still getting targeted a decent amount. We've really yet to see a good game from Kyle Pitts, but I think it's coming at some point. I still would want to have some exposure to Kyle Pitts at 5K. Tyler Higbee was my favorite value tight end last week. He was only 4K. He had a solid game, 5 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. Continues to be an every down tight end, playing every single snap at 4,600 in a good matchup against the Cardinals and what should be a high-scoring game. Tyler Higbee, good value tight end. I definitely have interest in him. Noah Fant, 4,300. I don't mind for cheap. Zach Ertz at 3,500. He kind of broke out last Monday night against the Cowboys. He had a good game against Dallas. He could maybe keep that going this week against KC. I think he's been running the same amount of routes as Dallas Goedert. He's been playing the same amount of snaps as Dallas Goedert, yet he's a lot cheaper than Dallas Goedert. So if I'm going to play one of the Eagles tight ends, it's going to be Zach Ertz. He's just too cheap compared to what Goddard is. If they're going to price Goddard at 4,800, they should have Ertz at 4,500. There's no reason for Ertz to be only 3,500 when Goddard's 4,800. So I do actually have some interest in Zach Ertz as a cheap kind of tight end punt option you could go to. But really, for me, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Higbee, and Zach Ertz, kind of my favorite positions, favorite options at this position, just kind of right now, what stands out early on. But yeah, the last spot in our lineup, we got 5,500 left for our flex spot, so that leaves us enough to play. We could play Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 5,400. We could go down to our guy Corey Davis, who I mentioned earlier, who I really like. Corey Davis at 5K. I don't think I'm going to stack up the Jets much this week, but I think Corey Davis is a one-off at 5K. I do have some interest in for sure. So let's plug Corey Davis into our first look lineup. That leaves us 500 on the table. We could probably upgrade a defense. I don't think we need to play the Jets defense. We could upgrade to the Vikings against Cleveland. I don't think we do that in this lineup since we have Odell Beckham, obviously, but we can maybe play the Falcons defense at home against Taylor Heineke. Sure, why not? 2,300 Falcons defense against Taylor Heineke. Let's just plug that in. So that's kind of our first look lineup for this week, guys. Obviously, I'm not playing this lineup. This is not a lineup that I would recommend you enter into contest. This is just kind of talking through roster construction for this week, what stands out at each position, what I do like, just kind of early on. But that does it for the video. Real quickly, before we do end the video, I want to hop back over to PrizePicks. Obviously, guys, earlier I gave out, over on Kyler Murray's passing yards as a kind of early pick I liked on PrizePicks, but there's a couple more I like as well. David Montgomery, we mentioned him, how much interest I have in him. Good matchup this week against the Lions in a game where the Bears are likely to be playing from ahead. They're likely to be running the ball a lot in the second half. I think David Montgomery looks like a good pick, over 63.5 rushing yards. I do like that as kind of a first look you can take on PrizePicks. And then the last one I wanted to mention, going over to receiving yards. Where is he? Where is he? He was just here. Corey Davis. There he is. So Corey Davis, 41.5 receiving yards. I think that's probably too low of a projection, especially in a better matchup against Tennessee, in another game where we expect the Jets to be playing from behind, going to have to throw a lot, in a game that Corey Davis likely sees close to 10 targets, 41.5 receiving yards. He can easily go over that this week. So these are three kind of first look early picks I like on PrizePicks for this week. You can tell me with these 3 picks, or you can just check out their entire board and make some picks for yourself. But if you do want to sign up for PrizePicks, guys, use promo code NOAH when you sign up. You'll get your first deposit match up to $100. And again, you can kind of go over there, make some picks for yourself, and see what they have to offer. But that does it for this video. Appreciate you guys watching. Drop a like before you get out of here. Hit that subscribe button as well. And make sure to comment down below. Let me know some of your favorite plays for this Week 4 slate. But as always, guys, appreciate you watching. We will see you in the next one. Best of luck this week. Peace.